Right? And I'm not playing no games.
Welcome, Saturday morning cartoons with Pops. That's right, a Pop perspective. We're going to talk about X-Men animated series. Half hour from now, Batman animated series. So you want to stay tuned. Saturday morning cartoons. Remember that? I grew up on it. Let's do it again. So if you've been following the videos, links below, you can catch up on some older episodes, get my thoughts, engage in conversation with your thoughts, and interactions have been great. Been loving revisiting this series, this show. I'm on episode 11 and 12 of season 1, Days of Future Past, part 1, part 2. And unlike the Batman, this is kind of like a direct sales marketing extension of the X-Men universe, right? So it's not exactly the same motivations as the Batman animated series. And here we see Days of Future Past being, I don't want to say directly adapted, because obviously it's not. Bishop is the main character in this 2-part series as the time traveler. Obviously, in the cartoon, the animated series, Kitty Pryde has basically been eliminated. They had done a test on that. She's not really included in this at this point. So instead of having her, Jubilee's already been added in the real time. So what they do is they use Bishop. And Bishop, of course, was topical because his comic books were coming out. His first appearance was coming out in the 90s. So it'd be a big deal for him to be a part of the show as well and introduce him because he's a super kick butt, cool X-Men character. Days of Future Past opens with, a look at the future. It's dark. The Sentinels have rounded up and executed most of the mutants. You see a couple that are on the run with Wolverine, and they're racing on a mission, and they interact. They get picked up by Bishop. Bishop's functioning basically as a bounty hunter. And the Sentinel, and Wolverine tells him, says, dude, they're going to turn on you too. And that's what exactly happens the next moment. And I know it's contrived, but bear with me. Now Bishop is accompanying them on the mission. Wolverine and he race to this place, a secret little area where Forge, he's another mutant in the future. He's contrived this time travel machine, and they have like a special receiver tracker to send Wolverine back. But because Wolverine even had a hard time battling Bishop, Bishop says, I should go. And Forge agrees, and they end up sending Bishop back through time, right? But when Bishop lands in the real time in the 90s, he has amnesia. He doesn't quite understand what's happened. He doesn't understand why he's there. Things get muddled. And his first thought of piecing these memories together is he should attack the X-Men. There's an assassin, an X-Men assassin that kills someone, likely the president. He needs to intercede. The tensions continue to grow among the X-Men regarding Gambit. Gambit behaves very erratically, right? There's a scene with Beast still in jail, waiting out for his court date. He thinks he'll get a fair trial. And Gambit's just like, no, and he just leaves. So you have erratic behavior of Gambit. So when Gambit is accused and sort of attacked by Bishop, that it all kind of keeps building on itself. Now, in the second part, you start to see more of how things kind of come together because you have everyone kind of migrating towards Washington where this assassination is supposed to take place. And what we end up finding is Mystique is really the one to do the assassination. She's going to shapeshift into a couple different people and ultimately Gambit to make the murder. And of course, it gets foiled at the last second. Bishop, you would think, is going to be somewhat relieved that the future has been saved. Rogue shows up at the last minute and confronts Mystique, creates more confusion, sends Bishop back to the future, that kind of thing. So it does a pretty good job of adapting the comic book series and the essence of it, even though they've made major changes. Because the comic books is issues 141, 142. John Byrne did this. What's interesting is it creates in the Marvel universe another Earth, right? It's an alternate timeline. I think it's 811. Earth 811. Our Earth is like 616. That's the normal comic book universe. 811 is this one, where the Sentinels are all out of control. They control everything, right? The other character that does get introduced, I didn't mention, is Nimrod. Nimrod is kind of like the ultimate Sentinel. I've never cared for the design of Nimrod. I hate the name Nimrod. So it's at least introduced as well. Very quickly subdued using Wolverine getting into a pool and Storm freezing it, and then they break it apart and destroy it and stuff. But To add Bishop into the mix, add a few other elements. You see a lot of this adapted really well with like First Class, X-Men First Class, where they had some of the assassination attempt. Um, uh, Stuff was sort of like they laid seeds to it, and then of course once you got to Days of Future Past, and Mystique is the one, you see all of this stuff that was done pretty well in that adaptation as well. So this type of comic book lore is really, really good. And I really do enjoy the fact that they were able to translate it pretty well for the show and really give us a taste of it, especially for people that don't read comic books, at least have an idea of this concept. Sort of a Back to the Future approach where you can kind of go back, you change the timeline and fix it and make, and put it back. You can put it back because it ends with the fact that Bishop arrives back in his future and it's still dark and bleak, and Forge is there and says, oh, something's still not right. We don't know what that means, which is good because they leave it as sort of a cliffhanger. They leave sort of things hanging out there. And then in the real time in the 90s, there's been an attack in Washington anyway, and it's Magneto, which again sets up more intrigue, more conflict, more X-Men stuff. So it makes you always want more. The show always did such a good job of this. I think this episode, episodes 11 and 12, really, I think Wolverine was really done well. Gambit, his dialogue is a little odd and quirky to me at times. Like I'm not real thrilled with his dialogue at times. I thought Bishop was okay. He's played a little more juvenile. I don't know. It's not quite right like the comic book, but it's pretty good. So I really do enjoy the Days of Future Past elements. And a lot of this comes in the comic book lore for years, well after the fact. So the fact that if you're not even really familiar with the comic books, you can at least get a taste with these 2 episodes. So super cool storyline, super cool element in the X-Men universe. I'd love to hear your thoughts. But if any of you want to get something, you would be looking for Uncanny X-Men 141, 142, Days of Future Past, John Byrne. So yeah, that's the actual story arc that's being adapted. And in that one, it's definitely more complicated because it involves Rachel Summers and then a character named Ahab who kidnaps Franklin, and which is the son of Mr. Fantastic and the Invisible Woman. And of course, Nathan Summers, which is the son of Cyclops and Madeline Pryor. So it's definitely more complicated lore, and I'm glad they just went with a very simplistic story. This is what we did. So in some ways, if you're not going to get into the depths of things, this was a pretty fair compromise, I think. You're talking about years away before Bishop is introduced. So they had to come up with something, right? So anyway, that's my take on it. Hope you're enjoying the cartoons. I'm loving doing this, by the way. So thanks to everyone who supported me in that decision. I appreciate it so much.
Ross, all I do is chill. My life is a thrill, for real, Bob Ross. I be too calm for the drama. You don't wanna cause a problem, I'll solve it, Bob Ross.